king once handed a penniless boy an errand meant to kill him, and smiled, certain he had just arranged a funeral. The boy was Perseus. The errand was the one head in the world that no man could take and live, the head of the Gorgon. But to understand the trap, we begin with a prophecy, and a father so afraid of the future that he tried to bury it alive. In the city of Argos, there ruled a king named Chrysaor, proud, uneasy, and tormented because he had no son to follow him. So he traveled to the oracle and asked the gods what his future held. The answer they gave froze the blood inside him. He would have no son, and worse, his own daughter's child, his grandson, was fated one day to rise and kill him. Chrysaor had one daughter, Danae, gentle and lovely as the morning. To stop the prophecy forever, he built a prison for her. Deep beneath his palace, he raised a sealed chamber of bronze, and he shut his daughter inside, away from every living man. No suitor could reach her. No husband could touch her. If she never bore a child, the king reasoned, he would never die. But the gods are not so easily locked out, and Zeus, the king of Olympus, had already seen the girl in her bronze room. He came to her not as a man, but as a wonder, a shower of golden rain pouring down through the roof of her prison. The gold fell upon Danae in the dark, and in that strange and shining moment, a child of Zeus was conceived. She bore a son in secret and named him Perseus. For a time, hidden in the bronze room, mother and child stayed safe. But a baby cries, and one day the king heard that small sound echo up through the very floor of his own palace. Chrysaor tore open the chamber and found his daughter holding the grandson he had been promised would one day kill him. He dared not murder them outright. To spill a daughter's blood was to call down the avenging furies upon his own head. So he chose a crueler mercy. He sealed Danae and the infant inside a wooden chest and cast it out upon the open sea. Let the waves decide, he told himself. Let the sea do what his own hand feared to do, and he turned away from the shore. The little chest tossed for days on the open water, mother and child shut in the dark, listening to the endless sea. Then, far off, an island rose. Seriphos, a fisherman named Dictys, cast his net and drew up the strangest catch of his life. He opened the chest and found a frightened woman and a living child, and he took them both gently into his home. There, in a fisherman's hut beside the sea, Perseus grew from a helpless baby into a strong and fearless young man. But the man who had saved them had a brother, and that brother was the king of the island. His name was Polydectes. Polydectes was everything that kind Dictys was not: greedy, cunning, and cold. And when he looked at Danae, he wanted her. She refused him. Year after year she refused him, and always between the grasping king and the woman, there stood her son. Perseus had grown into a man no tyrant could simply shove aside. To take the mother, the king first had to be rid of the son. So Polydectes laid a trap dressed as a celebration. He announced he would marry a distant princess and summoned his nobles to a feast. Each guest, he declared, must bring a gift worthy of a royal wedding, and the gift he named was a fine and noble horse. One by one, the wealthy men of Seriphos pledged their horses. Then every eye in the great hall turned toward Perseus. For Perseus was poor. He had no horse to give, no gold, nothing but his pride, and the king had counted on exactly that. Stung and shamed before them all, the young man let his wounded pride speak far louder than his sense. "I will bring you any gift you name," he said, "even the head of the Gorgon herself, and I will lay it at your feet." The hall went utterly still. Polydectes leaned forward, and behind his eyes something cruel and delighted came awake. For the king knew what the boast did not. He knew exactly what the Gorgon was, and that no man had ever come back from her. At the world's edge lived three monstrous sisters, the Gorgons, with wings of beaten bronze and serpents for hair. Two of them could never die, but the third, Medusa, was mortal, and her face was the most terrible thing in all creation. For to meet the gaze of Medusa, to look just once into her eyes, was to turn instantly and forever into cold gray stone. Her lair, men whispered, was a garden of statues, the frozen shapes of every hero who had ever come there to kill her. This was the errand. This was the gift. Polydectes smiled and held the young man fast to his own reckless word. The head of Medusa, the king repeated softly, "You have promised it. Bring it to me, or I shall take your mother instead." And there it was, the trap sprung shut. Go and die against the Gorgon, or stay and watch his mother be taken from him. Perseus walked down to the sea alone, and for a long while he simply stood there staring out at the impossible water. He had promised a monster's head. He had no map, no weapon equal to the task, and no way home at all if he failed. But Perseus was the son of Zeus, and high on Olympus, his reckless promise had not gone unheard. As despair settled over him, the air beside him shimmered, and two shining figures stepped out of the empty light. The first was Hermes, swift messenger of the gods, golden wings at his heels, a sly and knowing smile on his face. The second was gray-eyed Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, calm, terrible, and with her own ancient reason to want Medusa dead. "You cannot face the Gorgon unarmed and unguided," Athena told him, "but you will not go unarmed, nor will you go alone." Hermes drew a sickle of unbreakable adamant, a curved blade no scale nor bone could ever turn, and pressed it into his hand. Athena gave him her own shield, polished until it shone like a mirror. "Never look at her face," she warned, "only her reflection." But first, the god said, he needed three things hidden away at the edge of the world, and only the Graeae knew the road. The Graeae were three gray sisters, old as the sea itself, who shared a single eye and a single tooth between the three of them. Guided by Hermes, Perseus crept into their twilight cave and waited, watching as they passed the one eye from hand to hand. And in the blind moment between, as the eye left one sister and had not yet reached the next, Perseus darted in and snatched it. The three hags shrieked and clawed the empty air. Perseus held their only eye in his fist and named his price. "Tell me the road to the nymphs of the north," he said, "and you shall have your eye. Refuse me, and I cast it into the sea." They had no choice but to obey. They told him the way, and Perseus returned their eye and slipped back out into the gray. The nymphs received him kindly, for the gods had sent him, and they brought out three treasures kept since the dawn of the world. The first was a pair of winged sandals, like Hermes' own, that would carry him through the open air faster than any bird. The second was the kibisis, a special silver pouch, the one bag in all the world fit to hold a Gorgon's head safely. And the third was the most wondrous of all, the cap of Hades, lord of the dead, which made whoever wore it utterly invisible. Sandals to fly, a bag to carry, a cap to vanish, a mirror to see by, and an unbreakable blade to strike, Perseus was ready. Armed now by gods and nymphs alike, Perseus rose into the sky on the winged sandals and turned toward the edge of the world. He flew over wine-dark seas and pale deserts no map had ever named, on toward the place where the whole world ran out. At last he came to the rim of ocean, the gray river that circles all the lands, where no sun ever warmed the cold stone. and there he found their lair, and his heart turned to ice at what he saw standing guard around its mouth. Statues, hundreds of them, men, warriors, and beasts, all caught in mid-stride, mid-cry, mid-flight, every face frozen in terror. They were not statues at all. They were the dead, every hero who had come before him, caught by the gaze and turned to stone. Among them, half hidden in the shadow of the cave, lay the three sisters themselves, and Perseus did not dare look straight at them. He raised Athena's mirror-bright shield, turned his back upon the monsters, and watched them only in the gleaming curve of the bronze. In the reflection he saw them, vast bronze wings folded, scaled bodies coiled, and hair that moved, 1,000 living serpents, hissing. Two of those sisters he could never kill. He searched the reflection for the third, the mortal one. He searched for Medusa. And there she was, set apart from the others, asleep, the serpents of her hair stirring slowly, restless, even in her dreams. Even reflected, even sleeping, her face was a horror that pressed against his mind and begged him to turn and look. He did not turn, walking backward, his eyes locked on the mirror. Perseus moved toward the sleeping Gorgon step by silent step. The winged sandals held him steady above the stone. The adamant sickle was ready in his hand, his heart hammered against his ribs. One mistake, one glance, one stumble, one serpent waking, and he would join that silent army of stone forever. Behind him, the two immortal sisters slept on, their serpents whispering. The whole gray world seemed to hold its breath. And Athena's voice came soft in his ear. Now, strike now, and let my hand guide your own. Perseus lifted the sickle high, his eyes locked on the reflection, and with one clean and desperate stroke he brought it down. The adamant blade bit clean through, and the head of Medusa came free, and still Perseus did not look upon her face. But from the dark blood of her severed neck, something impossible was already rising up into the air. Out leapt Pegasus, a great winged horse, white as sea foam, his mighty wings thundering open for the very first time. And beside him sprang Chrysaor, a golden warrior with a blade of gold, the hidden children of Medusa and the sea god Poseidon. Perseus had no moment to wonder at them. Behind him, the two immortal Gorgons were waking, and they had heard their sister die. They rose shrieking, a sound like tearing metal, bronze wings beating, serpent hair lashing, hunting the one who had killed her. Quickly, Perseus swept the terrible head into the kibisis, the silver bag, where even in death its gaze could harm no one. The sisters could never die, and they were faster than any mortal. They would run him down within moments across the open sky. But Perseus reached up and pulled on the cap of Hades, and between one heartbeat and the next, he simply vanished from sight. The Gorgons wheeled and screamed and clawed the empty air, but the cap of the dead had hidden him from them completely. Invisible, the winged sandals bearing him fast and high, Perseus rose out of their reach and fled into the open sky. He had done the impossible. He had taken the one head that no man could take, and lived to carry it away with him. Far behind him, the wailing of the immortal sisters faded, and the cold gray edge of the world fell away beneath his feet. The boy who once had nothing to give now carried, sealed in a silver bag, the deadliest weapon in all the world. And he turned for home, for Seriphos, for his mother, and for the tyrant who was so certain he would never return. But the gods are never finished with a hero in a single day, and Perseus's road home would not run straight. For as he flew along the coast of a far-off kingdom, something below caught his eye and made him slow in the air. There, on a great rock above the crashing sea, Chained and weeping, stood a young woman more lovely than any he had ever seen. She was bound to the stone like an offering, her arms held fast, the dark waves boiling hungrily beneath her feet. Perseus did not yet know her name was Andromeda, nor what monster the sea was about to send to claim her. But that is the next chapter of his story. For now the head was won, and the tyrant's trap had failed completely. A king had meant to make a funeral, and instead had made a legend, armed by the gods, riding home upon the wind. And the severed head sealed in that silver bag was not finished, for a weapon like that always demands to be used again. The Gorgon was slain, the hero was made, and somewhere just ahead, chained to a rock, the next myth was already waiting. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you for watching. If this tale stayed with you, subscribe. A new myth arrives every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, may the old stories keep their hold on you.